The man I was supposed to marry didn't just change the locks. He bought the entire building and then threw my mother's wedding veil out the window while The rain wasn't just falling. It was punishing the pavement, a cold, relentless deluge that soaked through my trench coat and chilled me to the bone. I stood there, shivering, my grocery bags tearing at the handles, the heavy scent of damp cardboard and expensive organic kale filling my nose. All I wanted, all I had been dreaming of for the last 12 hours of a grueling double shift at the hospital, was to kick off my heels, pour a glass of wine, and curl up on the velvet sofa I had spent 3 months' salary on. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers numb and clumsy. I found the familiar jagged edge of the front door key and slid it into the lock, but it didn't slide. It hit a wall. I frowned, shaking the handle, thinking maybe the cold had warped the metal. I tried again, and again. My heart gave a tiny, uneasy thump against my ribs. I pulled the key out, wiped it on my driest patch of sleeve, and squinted at the lock in the dim hallway light. The lock was different. It wasn't the brushed nickel deadbolt I'd picked out myself. It was a shiny, cheap brass fixture that looked entirely out of place on my designer door. A cold sweat that had nothing to do with the rain broke out across my forehead. I dropped the grocery bags. A carton of eggs shattered, the yellow yolk bleeding out onto the welcome mat, and I began to pound on the door. "Mark!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Mark, open up! My key isn't working!" Silence. The kind of heavy, suffocating silence that feels like a physical weight. I knew he was in there. So his car was in the driveway, and I could see the soft, warm glow of the living room lamps leaking out from under the door. "Mark!" I screamed louder, kicking the bottom of the door. "Mark, it's pouring out here. Open the door!" Finally, I heard the heavy thud of footsteps. The deadbolt turned, a sound that used to mean safety but now sounded like a gunshot. The door creaked open, but only a few inches. The security chain was engaged. Through the narrow crack, I saw the face of the man I was supposed to marry in 3 months. Mark looked at me, but his eyes weren't filled with the warmth I usually saw. They were cold, distant, almost clinical. "What are you doing, Maya?" he asked, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "What am I doing?" I gasped, gesturing at the rain-slicked hallway and my ruined groceries. "Oh, I'm trying to get into my apartment. Why won't my key work? Why did you change the locks?" "It's not a good time," he said, shifting his weight. Behind him, I heard a sound that made my blood turn to ice. It was the clinking of silverware against fine china and a high-pitched, melodic laugh that I recognized all too well. Evelyn, my future mother-in-law. "Is that Maya?" Her voice drifted from the kitchen. My kitchen. "Marky, tell her we're in the middle of a very important dinner. It's rude to interrupt." I felt like I had been slapped. "Marky?" I pushed against the door, but the chain held firm. "Mark, let me in right now. I pay the rent here. My name is the only one on the lease. What is she doing in there? Why are you acting like this?" Mark sighed, a long, weary sound as if I was the one being difficult. He leaned closer to the crack. And for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of the man I loved, but it was quickly replaced by a stony resolve. "Things have changed, Maya," he whispered. "You've been so stressed lately, so controlling." My mother felt that this environment wasn't conducive to our future family. She's helping me reorganize. We needed a fresh start, and that starts with who has access to this space. Access to this space? I was hyperventilating now, the absurdity of the situation crashing down on me. This is my home. I chose the paint. I bought the furniture. I pay the bills. You moved in here 6 months ago with nothing but a suitcase and a mountain of credit card debt. Open this door. I lunged forward, trying to hook my finger around the chain to slide it back, but Mark slammed the door shut, nearly catching my hand. And I heard him slide the bolt back into place. I stood there, stunned, my forehead pressed against the cold wood. I started to cry, not a quiet, dainty sob, but a raw, ugly wailing. I hammered on the door with both fists until my knuckles bled. "Mark, open the door! Evelyn, get out of my house!" The door opened again, just a crack. This time, Mark's face was hard as granite. He looked at me with a terrifying kind of pity. "Maya, stop making a scene. You're being hysterical, and it's exactly why we made this decision. My mom is the head of this family now. She's the one who understands tradition, respect, and order. If you want to be a part of this family, you have to earn your way back in." "Earn my way back into my own apartment?" I choked out. "Mark, listen to yourself. She's brainwashing you. Call the police, call whoever you want. But get her out of there and let me in." Mark leaned in, his voice dropping to a chilling, razor-thin edge. "I think you misunderstood," he said. "My mom decides who's allowed inside now. And right now, she says you're a stranger." He started to close the door again, but then he stopped, a cruel smirk touching his lips. "Oh, and Maya? Don't bother calling the landlord. My mother didn't just change the locks. She bought the building this morning." My jaw dropped, my heart stopping in my chest as the world seemed to tilt on its axis. But wait until you hear what he threw out the window next. I stood there, paralyzed, the rain turning into a freezing sleet that stung my cheeks. She bought the building? That was impossible. This was a high-end complex in the heart of the city. We were talking millions. But as I looked at Mark's smug, self-righteous expression, I realized that Evelyn's old money wasn't just a point of pride for her. It was a weapon. She had used her inheritance to turn my sanctuary into my prison. "You're lying," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You're both insane. Mark, please, look at me. We were supposed to pick out flower arrangements tomorrow. We were supposed to grow old together." Mark didn't even flinch. He looked over his shoulder as if checking for instructions. "The flowers have been canceled, Maya. Mother says lilies are for funerals, and frankly, that's what this relationship has become. You were always too independent, too loud. You didn't fit the mold." Suddenly, the window to my second-story bedroom slid open with a screeching protest. I looked up, squinting through the downpour. Evelyn was standing there, framed by the warm light of my own bedroom, wearing my favorite silk robe, the one Mark had bought me for our anniversary. She looked down at me like I was a stray dog she was contemplating calling animal control on. "It's cluttered in here, Marky," she called out, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "So much trash. We need to clear out the stagnant energy if we're going to make room for the new life coming into this home." "New life?" I screamed. "Evelyn, get your hands off my things. That's my robe. Those are my memories." She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up a heavy white box from my vanity, the one that held my mother's vintage lace wedding veil, the only thing I had left of her. My heart stopped. "Evelyn, no, please." She tilted her hand, a graceful, practiced movement, and the box tumbled out of the window. And I lunged for it, but it was too late. It hit the wet pavement with a sickening thud, the lid popping open to reveal the delicate lace soaking up the oily black rainwater. "Oops," Evelyn chirped, her eyes dancing with malice. "It looked a bit dusty anyway." Then came the rest. My designer heels, my medical textbooks from years of grueling study, my framed photos, everything that made me me was being tossed into the mud like garbage. Mark stood behind the chain door, watching the carnage with a terrifyingly blank expression. He wasn't even the man I loved anymore. He was a hollowed-out shell, a puppet with Evelyn pulling the strings. "Mark, do something," I sobbed, collapsing to my knees in the dirt, clutching my mother's ruined veil to my chest. "How can you let her do this? This is our life." "It was never our life, Maya," he said, and his voice cold as the sleet. "It was your life, and you just let me live in it. Mother showed me that. She showed me how you were draining me, how you were keeping me small so you could feel big. Well, the power dynamic has shifted." I looked up at him, my vision blurred by tears and rain. "Draining you? I paid for your car. I paid off your gambling debt so your mother wouldn't find out. I protected you from her." A sharp intake of breath came from the window above. Evelyn's face hardened, the mask of sweet mother finally slipping to reveal the monster beneath. "Gambling debts," she hissed. "Marky, what is she talking about?" Mark panicked. I saw the sweat break out on his upper lip even in the cold. "She's lying, Mom. She's just trying to turn us against each other. She's crazy, I told you." "I have the bank statements." "Hi, Evelyn!" I yelled, a desperate hope flaring in my chest. If I could just show her who her son really was, maybe this nightmare would end. "I have the receipts. He lost $50,000 in 6 months. I'm the one who saved him." For a second, there was a heavy, pregnant silence. Evelyn stared down at me, then back at Mark. The tension was so thick I could practically taste it. I thought I had won. I thought the truth would set me free. But then, Evelyn began to laugh, a low, guttural sound that chilled me more than the rain ever could. "Oh, Maya," she sneered, leaning over the windowsill. "You really think I didn't know? Who do you think gave him the money to lose in the first place? I was testing him, and I was testing you. I wanted to see how long you'd play the martyr before you tried to use it as leverage. You failed, dear. Now you're just as predictable as the rest of them." She turned away from the window, and a moment later the front door clicked. Not the sound of it opening, the sound of an electronic keypad being reset. "You're officially erased, Maya," Mark said, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and newfound cruelty. "The lease is gone. The locks are changed. Even the security codes are different. You don't exist here anymore." He started to close the door, but I threw my body against it, desperate, feral. "You can't do this. I have nowhere to go. My phone, my purse, they're all inside." "Check the bushes," Mark said, pointing to the hydrangea macrophylla I had planted last spring. I looked over and saw my leather handbag lying face down in the dirt. I scrambled for it, my fingers shaking as I unzipped it. My phone was there. Oh, but the screen was shattered. My wallet was there, but when I opened it, every single credit card had been snapped in half. My ID was missing, my passport gone. I looked back at the door, but it was already shut. I was standing in the rain, stripped of my home, my history, and my identity. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I reached into the side pocket of my bag, hoping against hope that my spare car key was still there. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. It wasn't a key. It was a small USB drive I didn't recognize. I pulled it out, staring at it in confusion. There was a small piece of masking tape on it with a handwritten note in a script I didn't recognize. It said, "The truth about the purchase." I looked up at the apartment, and for a split second, I saw a shadow move in the guest bedroom window. And not Mark, not Evelyn. Someone else was in there. Someone who shouldn't have been. But wait until you hear whose face I saw pressed against the glass. I squinted through the curtains of the guest bedroom, my breath catching in my throat. The figure was small, delicate, and familiar. The shadow moved, the light catching a shock of platinum blonde hair, the exact shade I had helped her pick out at the salon just last week. It was Sarah, my younger sister, my maid of honor. The world went silent. The sound of the rain, the pounding of my own blood in my ears, the distant hum of city traffic, all of it vanished, replaced by a cold, hollow vacuum. My sister, the person I had protected since our parents died, the girl I had put through college with my own nursing salary, was standing inside my home while I was being discarded in the gutter. Sarah!" I screamed, my voice a jagged tear in the night. "Sarah, look at me! Open this door!" She didn't look. She didn't even flinch. She simply reached out and pulled the heavy velvet curtains shut, plunging the room into darkness. Rage, hot and oily, surged through me. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was dangerous. I scrambled through the mud, grabbing my shattered handbag, and sprinted toward the side entrance of the building. I knew this place better than anyone. I knew the service code for the delivery entrance, the one the super had given me months ago when I'd tipped him for helping with the sofa. My fingers shook as I punched in the numbers, 3921. The light turned green. The click of the magnetic lock felt like a victory. I burst into the hallway, a trail of muddy water and wet lace following me. I didn't take the elevator. Worse, I ran up the stairs, my lungs burning, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. By the time I reached the third floor, I was a vision of madness, soaking wet, bleeding from the knuckles, clutching a ruined veil. I didn't knock this time. I threw my entire weight against the door, screaming for them to face me. "Open it! Open it now, or I swear I'll burn this whole building down with you inside." The door swung open so suddenly, I almost fell forward. Mark was standing there, but he wasn't alone. Evelyn was behind him, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder, and Sarah was tucked into the corner of the hallway, her eyes red-rimmed but her expression defiant. "You shouldn't have come back, Maya," Sarah whispered. "It's over. We're a family now, a real one." "A real one?" I barked a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Hey, Sarah, what are you doing? This woman is a monster. She's taking everything I have and you're helping her?" "She's giving me what you never could," Sarah snapped, stepping forward. "A future, security. She's paying off my student loans, Maya. She's giving Mark the life he deserves, away from your constant nagging and your rules. You were always the perfect sister, the one in charge. Well, guess what? I'm the one in charge now." Evelyn stepped forward, her silk robe shimmering in the hallway light. "You see, Maya, loyalty can be bought, but respect must be earned. You never respected my son. You treated him like a project. Sarah understands that a man like Mark needs to be supported, not managed." I looked at Mark, his face still a blank mask. "Mark, tell me you're not doing this. Tell me you're not choosing my sister over me." Mark looked at Sarah, then back at me. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "I'm not choosing your sister, Maya. I'm choosing the woman who's actually carrying my child." The floor seemed to disappear beneath my feet. I looked at Sarah's stomach, then back at Mark. The new life Evelyn had mentioned. It wasn't just a metaphor. My fiancé had been having an affair with my sister right under my nose, and they had been waiting for the perfect moment to strip me of everything. You're pregnant?" I whispered, the words tasting like ash. 6 weeks, Sarah said, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. "Evelyn found out and decided it was time to make things right. She bought the building for us, Maya. For the baby, we need the space. Your space." I felt the USB drive in my pocket, the sharp corner digging into my thigh. I remembered the note, the truth about the purchase. "You didn't buy this building, Evelyn," I said, my voice suddenly calm, a deadly kind of cold settling over me. "I don't know what lie you told them, but I know you. You don't have that kind of money left. You spent it all on your husband's legal fees before he died in prison." Evelyn's face went pale, her eyes narrowing into slits. "You shut your mouth, you little brat." "I have it right here," I said, pulling out the USB. "A friend of mine in the auditor's office. Someone who saw what you were trying to do. This isn't a deed of sale. It's a mortgage fraud scheme. You didn't buy this building. You took out a predatory loan in my name using a forged power of attorney." Mark's head whipped around to look at his mother. "What? Mom? But you said the money was from the trust." "The trust is empty, Mark," I screamed. "She's been broke for years. She's using us. She's using your baby to get her hands on my credit score and my assets." Evelyn lunged for the USB, her fingernails clawing at my hand, but I shoved her back. She tripped on the hem of her robe and tumbled onto the floor, her perfect facade finally shattering. "You're lying," Evelyn shrieked from the floor. "Marky, don't listen to her. She's trying to destroy us." But Mark wasn't looking at his mother anymore. He was looking at the USB drive in my hand with a look of pure, unadulterated greed. He didn't care about the betrayal or the fraud or me. He only cared about the money. He stepped toward me, his hand outstretched. "Give it to me, Maya. Give me the drive, and maybe I'll let you take your clothes. Maybe I won't call the police for trespassing." I backed away toward the open door of the apartment. I saw the laptop sitting on the kitchen island, the one I had used to study for my boards. I bolted for it, slamming the drive into the port. "Let's see what else is on here, shall we?" I hissed, my fingers flying across the keys. The files opened instantly, but it wasn't just bank statements. It wasn't just forged signatures. There was a folder labeled Project Maya. I clicked it and a video file began to play. The screen showed my own bedroom, a hidden camera angle I had never seen. It was dated 3 months ago. In the video, Mark and Evelyn were sitting on my bed, whispering. But they weren't talking about money. And they were talking about a slow-acting medication Evelyn had been slipping into my morning coffee for weeks. The reason I had been feeling so stressed and hysterical. But wait until you hear the real reason they wanted me out of the picture before the wedding. The video on the laptop screen was grainy, captured from a hidden camera tucked inside the smoke detector of my own bedroom. My bedroom. The place where I had slept, dreamed, and whispered, "I love you," to a man who was now watching me with the eyes of a predator. On the screen, Evelyn was sitting on the edge of my bed, holding a small, amber-colored vial. Mark was pacing in front of her, looking agitated. "The dosage is too low, Mother," Mark's voice came through the laptop speakers, distorted but unmistakable. "She's still sharp, and she's questioning the bank transfers." "Patience, Marky," Evelyn replied, her voice smooth as poisonous silk. "We need her confused, not comatose. If she's too far gone, she can't sign the final documents. The stress needs to look natural. The neighbors need to see her spiraling. By the time we're done, no one will believe a word she says. She'll be the crazy ex-fiancé who lost her mind and disappeared." I felt a cold, oily nausea rise in my throat. The vitamins Mark had been insisting I take every morning, the herbal tea Sarah had been brewing for me to help with my anxiety. It wasn't stress. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being chemically erased. "You were drugging me," I whispered, looking up from the screen. My eyes darted to Sarah. "You, my own sister. You were the one who brought me the tea every night. Yet you told me I looked tired. You told me I needed to rest." Sarah didn't look away. She didn't cry. She didn't offer a single shred of the sisterly love I had banked my entire life on. She simply crossed her arms, a cold, clinical smirk touching her lips. "You always had everything, Maya," Sarah said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "The career, the perfect fiancé, the designer apartment. You looked down on me from your little pedestal of success. Did you really think I'd spend my whole life being your shadow?" Evelyn offered me a seat at the table. All I had to do was help clear a spot. "Clear a spot?" I screamed, my voice echoing off the walls of the kitchen I had designed. "By killing me? By turning me into a ghost in my own life?" "Nobody's killing you, Maya," Evelyn said, standing up from where she had fallen, dusting off her silk robe with a terrifyingly calm precision. "We're simply relocating you. You see, the new life Sarah and Mark are starting requires a clean slate and a significant amount of capital. Capital that you so graciously provided through your hard work and your remarkably high credit limit." "The purchase of the building," I gasped, the pieces finally clicking together in a horrific mosaic. "You used my identity to take out the loans. You're not the owner, I am, but you forged the power of attorney so you can sell the units and vanish with the cash." "Exactly," Evelyn purred. "And since you've been so unstable lately, your signature on those documents will be easily explained away when you have your unfortunate breakdown." Mark stepped toward me, his hand reaching out for the laptop. "Give me the drive, Maya. It's over. You have no money, no phone, no ID, and now no sister. You're a ghost. If you leave now, maybe we won't have to call the paramedics to take you to the psychiatric ward. Think about it. Do you really want to spend the next 10 years in a padded room?" I backed away, clutching the laptop to my chest. I looked at the door, then back at the 3 people I had loved most in the world. They weren't my family. They were a pack of wolves, and I was the kill they were about to tear apart. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I'm calling the police. I'll show them the video. I'll show them the bank records." "With what phone?" Mark sneered. "With what credibility? Look at you, Maya. You're covered in mud, you're bleeding, you're screaming about conspiracies and secret videos. To the world, you're exactly what we said you were, a woman who snapped." He lunged for me. I swung the laptop, the heavy metal corner, catching him across the jaw. He let out a muffled groan and stumbled back, clutching his face. "Run, Sarah," Evelyn yelled. "Get the papers from the safe. We leave tonight." Sarah bolted toward the master bedroom, but I was faster. I didn't care about the laptop anymore. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the one thing they couldn't take from me: the truth. I tackled Sarah in the hallway, the two of us crashing into the console table. A glass vase shattered, sending shards of crystal flying like diamonds across the floor. We scrambled, scratching and pulling. A primal, sisterly war played out in the ruins of my home. "You're pathetic," Sarah hissed, her fingernails digging into my arms. "Mark never loved you. He used to laugh about you behind your back. He called you his ATM." "Then he's going to love being broke," I yelled, shoving her off me. I grabbed the heavy bronze statue from the hallway, a housewarming gift from my late father, and I didn't aim for them. I aimed for the massive floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. The glass shattered with a deafening, melodic roar, the cold night air rushing in like a physical force. "Police!" I screamed out into the street. "Help! I'm being held against my will! Help!" Mark scrambled to his feet, his face bruised and bloody. "Shut her up! Mark, shut her up!" Evelyn was hysterical now, her composure finally shattered. Mark grabbed a heavy velvet throw pillow and moved toward me, his intent clear. He wasn't going to let me scream again, and he was going to finish what the drugs couldn't. I backed up toward the broken window, the jagged glass biting into my heels. "Stay back, Mark. I mean it." "It's over, Maya," he whispered, his eyes dark with a desperate kind of madness. "Nobody is coming to save you." But just as he lunged, a flash of red and blue light reflected off the raindrops on the broken glass. A siren wailed, cutting through the night like a blade. Someone had called the police, but it wasn't the neighbors. The front door kicked open, and a team of officers swarmed the room, their weapons drawn. "Police, don't move! Hands in the air!" I collapsed to my knees, sobbing with relief. I looked at the officers, expecting to see my salvation. But the lead detective didn't go for Mark. He didn't go for Evelyn. He walked straight toward me, his handcuffs out. "Da Maya Vance?" he asked, his voice booming. "You're under arrest for the attempted murder of Mark Sterling and the grand larceny of the Sterling Trust." My heart stopped. I looked at Mark, and for the first time, I saw the true depth of the trap. He wasn't looking at me with fear. He was looking at the detective with a practiced, victimized sob. "Thank God you're here," Mark cried, pointing at his bleeding jaw. "She's gone completely insane. She attacked us. She's been stealing from my mother's trust for months." I looked at the detective, desperate. "No, look at the laptop. Look at the USB. They were drugging me. They forged the papers." The detective picked up the USB drive from the floor. He plugged it into a small handheld device, his face unreadable. After a moment, he looked back at me, and his expression wasn't one of pity, and it was one of disgust. "There's no video of a drugging on here, Ms. Vance," he said. "There's only one file on this drive." He turned the screen toward me. It wasn't the hidden camera footage. It was a video of me, or someone who looked exactly like me, standing over a sleeping Mark with a pillow, whispering, "Soon it will all be mine." My jaw dropped. The USB had been swapped. But wait until you hear who the detective called as the primary witness standing right behind him in the hallway. The detective stepped aside, and a woman stepped out of the shadows of the hallway. She was elegant, middle-aged, and dressed in a sharp charcoal suit. I recognized her instantly. It wasn't the doctor, and it wasn't a stranger. It was Detective Miller, the head of the white-collar crimes division I had been working with in secret for the last 3 weeks. The room went dead silent. Mark's triumphant smirk faltered, and Evelyn's hand dropped from his shoulder. Sarah looked back and forth between us, her confusion turning into a visible, trembling fear. "Detective," Mark stammered, his voice losing its edge. What is she doing here? I told you my fiancé attacked me." Detective Miller didn't look at Mark. She looked at me, a small, grim nod of respect passing between us. Then she turned to the officers. "Lower your weapons, now." She walked into the center of the living room, stepping over the shattered glass of the window. She picked up the USB drive from the detective's hand. "Ms. Vance," Miller said, her voice like cold iron. "Had I told you to wait for the signal, you almost got yourself killed." "I couldn't wait," I rasped, leaning against the kitchen island for support. "They changed the locks. They were throwing my mother's things out the window. I had to get to the laptop." "Wait, what is this?" Evelyn shrieked, her voice hitting a glass-shattering register. "I am the owner of this building. I want this woman removed immediately." "You're not the owner of anything, Evelyn," Detective Miller said, pulling a folded document from her blazer. "This is a warrant for your arrest, along with your son, Mark Sterling, for identity theft, racketeering, and the attempted premeditated murder of Maya Vance." Sarah let out a choked sob, her hands flying to her stomach. "Murder? No. Mark, you said we were just getting her out of the way. You said she'd be in a facility where she'd be safe." Mark ignored her. He was looking at the door, his eyes darting like a trapped animal's. "You have nothing," he hissed. "That video proves she was the aggressor." "The video you just played?" Miller held up the USB drive. "The one we watched you upload to this drive 10 minutes ago via remote access from your phone. The one our tech team has been tracking since you created it using an AI deepfake generator last night. That video?" Mark's face drained of color. He looked down at his phone, his fingers twitching. "We've had this apartment bugged for 72 hours, Mark," Miller continued, her voice echoing in the hollow space. "We heard every word. We heard you discussing the dosage of the benzodiazepines you were slipping into her tea. When we heard Evelyn bragging about how she'd forged the power of attorney, and we heard the most interesting part, the part Sarah doesn't know yet." Sarah looked at Miller, her face a mask of terror. "What? What don't I know?" Miller looked at my sister with a pity that felt like a death sentence. "Sarah, there is no trust fund. There is no new life in this apartment. Mark and Evelyn have already sold your future child's social security number to a black market identity ring. And the pregnancy? Mark has been seeing a fertility specialist for a year. He's sterile, Sarah. He knew you weren't pregnant with his child. He was just using you as the final wedge to break Maya's spirit so she wouldn't fight the insanity plea." The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah turned to Mark, her mouth working but no sound coming out. And she looked at his face, the face of the man she had betrayed her own blood for, and she saw the truth. He didn't love her. He didn't even want her. She was just a tool, a disposable piece in a game played by a mother and son who were black holes of greed. "Mark," Sarah whispered. Mark didn't even look at her. "You were always a pathetic backup, Sarah," he spat, his mask finally dropping to reveal the monster underneath. "You were so easy to flip. You hated her so much for being perfect that you handed us everything on a silver platter." Sarah let out a scream, a sound of pure, unadulterated, soul-shattering agony, and lunged for him. The officers moved in, grabbing her, grabbing Mark, grabbing Evelyn. The apartment exploded into chaos, shouting, the clinking of real handcuffs, the frantic reading of rights. Evelyn was still screaming about her status as she was dragged through the shattered glass. Sarah was sobbing on the floor, her hands over her face, calling my name over and over. "Maya! Maya, I'm sorry. Please, I'm sorry." I couldn't move. I stood in the middle of my ruined home, clutching my mother's wet, muddy lace veil to my chest. I watched them take the man I thought I'd marry. I watched them take the sister I had raised. Detective Miller walked over to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It's over, Maya. We have the bank records. We have the vials of medication. You're safe." "Safe," I repeated. The word felt hollow. I looked around at the broken glass, the upturned furniture, the empty spaces where my life used to be. The rain was still pouring in through the shattered window, soaking the velvet sofa, while it's washing away the last remnants of the home I had built. I walked to the window and looked down. The grocery bags were still there on the sidewalk, the eggs crushed, the kale wilting in the cold. A few months later, I sat in that same living room. The window had been replaced. The locks were new, truly new this time. The apartment was pristine, filled with sunlight and the scent of fresh lilies, not the ones Evelyn hated, but the ones I loved. The phone rang. It was the prison's legal department. Sarah was asking for a visitor, again. She wanted to tell me about the baby that never was, about how she was the victim, too. I looked at the phone, then at the framed photo on the mantel. It was a photo of me and Sarah when we were children, holding hands at the beach. I picked it up, my thumb lingering over her smiling face. Then, where I walked to the trash can and dropped the photo inside, I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't cry. I simply walked to the door, turned the deadbolt, and for the first time in my life, I felt the true weight of the key in my hand. I was alone. I was broken. But as I stepped out into the sun, I realized one thing. The door was locked. And this time, I was the only one who decided who was allowed inside.